situation is rapidly deteriorating. It looks like it, because since the time we spoke to Gaurav an hour ago, the number of sounds we're hearing on the ground are much more. Gaurav, you're in the eastern part of Ukraine. We've got a map up, where we'll put that map up on our screens so our viewers can tell exactly where Gaurav is reporting from right now, with those shells exploding in the background. Gaurav, how is this going to work? Are there enough military forces in the place where that you are right now, or will there be a movement of forces, from the western part of Ukraine, from the mainland, so to speak, into where you are?
Shiv, majority of the Ukrainian forces have been fighting in this Donbass region since 2014. So their involvement and their engagement here is very intense, and which is where several military analysts here and overseas have been saying that this Donbass region is saturated, given that 30% of that area was with rebels, now an independent People's Republic, 70% with Ukraine. So Ukraine, to retain control of that 70%, has massive deployment. But remember, that massive deployment is to take on separatist forces, maybe backed by Russia, but not directly Russia, in terms of having the kind of military hardware, professionalism, training, tactics adopted by the Russian army directly for a full-scale military operation. So that is where now it remains to be seen that those forces who've been fighting in this region 2014 onwards, are they in a position to withstand? Yes, they can withstand separatists backed by Russia. Can they withstand a direct assault of the Russian forces, which does appear to be either imminent or underway at the front lines? That's point one. And point two, especially without the backing of any other nature, other borders are also equally, if not more, vulnerable, Shiv, whether it's Crimea in the south or from Belarus in the north, the Sea of Azov. Yesterday we were reporting from the Sea of Azov, and Sea of Azov has a lot of sea mines that have now been put across that entire water belt to prevent an amphibious assault. So Ukraine is taking a number of measures to protect its territory, but will those measures stand up to a professional army like the Russian army directly moving in? Remains to be seen and should be clear in the next 24 to 48 hours, Shiv.
What does the Ukrainian military look like, Gaurav? The Russians have put out huge numbers of information warfare videos of their tanks, their armored vehicles, their guns, their artillery, their aircraft. We haven't seen much of the Ukrainian military itself. What does that look like? How strong are they militarily? Of course, a lot of hardware has been pouring in over the last few days. We've got some graphics comparing the militaries of Russia and Ukraine. Of course, there's no real comparison when you do a kind of bean count of the two militaries. But what does the Ukrainian military look like? Can it defend itself in the absence of outside intervention?
The moment Russia said it's moving in for action, and all talks had failed initially after the Russian President Vladimir Putin's address to the nation, what did President Vladimir Zelensky do on ground? He sought international support, and that is an indication of ground realities here. As you very rightly pointed out, Shiv, there is, if you look at the military balance, it's tipped heavily in Russia's favor, and no two ways about it. While and that's the comparison, Shiv. Since you talk hardware very extensively, T-80 UD tanks Ukraine, T-90 tanks Russia. They've got now, of course, they've got their Javelin missiles that are coming in. America sent in a lot of ATGMs or anti-tank guided missiles to Ukraine, but it takes time to operate those systems, and whether all of this will come into use when there is a huge Russian blitzkrieg, if I may, in this area, if should that happen, whether there's a missile attack, whether there are airborne forces that are used against Ukraine. Also do keep in mind, Shiv, that the population here, and especially in the east, does have a lot of sympathy for the Russians. So that is another issue that Ukraine would have to deal with. There are people who are saying, like President Putin, that Ukraine should not become a playground of NATO countries. So in all of that, can Ukraine actually stand up to an organized Russian army assault, even if it's restricted to an area? it does appear rather unlikely, but then it's always the man behind the gun and his motivation, his dedication, and the higher level of leadership that would take that call ultimately, because everyone was still hoping, or till late last night when we were speaking to people on ground, they were hoping diplomatically a solution would be found, but the resistance that was shown in terms of what the Ukrainian government was saying, emergency being imposed, conscription, asking reservists to come out, was all an indication that the balloon very soon is going up.